asked him about the Enterprise and Excelsior, and this is what he said. As far as the B, from what I can remember, we did make permanent changes to the mold. Might have been beryllium inserts, but I doubt it. They kind of decided the Excelsior had run its course. What is up, Plastic Addicts? Welcome back to the Sci-Fi Model Podcast, your source for everything sci-fi, model-related, and entertainment, pop culture, news, interviews, etc. Today is going to jump right in. We're going to talk about the Enterprise B model from AMT. Someone had reached out to me and asked me about some things about it. It got me thinking, and I just kind of really went down the rabbit hole about the history of the model. So I've kind of put together a very quick little bit of research information from the Collector Model blog, and I'll provide links to all that in there, plus a couple additional links. There's a really good one from Memory Alpha on the history of all the kits. So over the years, I've built the Excelsior and the Enterprise B a number of times. They're decent model kits. They both received improvements with their reissues, which we'll get into as part of this discussion. But let me go ahead and get into it, and we'll kind of go over the history of the model kit and AMT Ertl at the same time. So this story, kind of starts all the way back in 94, before 94, but 94 is when the original Excelsior model kit was released, and either it was in continuous production for many years, or they produced a lot of them in the first run, because the packaging didn't really change over its first lifespan. But then in 95, the B came along and both were available at the same time. So that's kind of, as we get into the story, it's kind of confusing as to how AMT was able to do that, because I wasn't able to find the best history. I was able to find bits and pieces. I was able to put together enough to kind of, in my little research notes here, which will also make up my show notes about the history. One thing I do know for sure is that I remember this in 1999, they stopped producing Trek kits. The license expired, or they didn't renew it, or the company was in some sort of trouble, which I think was the case, because I do know that they end up merging with Racing Champions sometime before 2005. Okay, so right now I'm looking at the Memory Alpha article on the model kits, and this is what I see. So I remember 99, as I said, they kind of lost the license, and then in 2003, Polar Lights, which was part of our Racing Champions, released 4 new kits: the 1000 scale Enterprise, the 350 refit, the 350 NX-01, the 1000 D7, and a Scorpion from Nemesis. And that was all under the Polar Lights banner. And then in 2004, under Polar Lights RC2, they released the 1350 refit. Polar Lights comes in, they start making new kits, but they don't have the license for the old kits. In 2005, after AMT had merged with Racing Champions, or RC2, then they started getting into reissuing old kits. And initially, they started with the 2500 series. They did old 87, 88 2500 kit, which had the original series, the refit, and the D. And they also reissued the B, C, and E, the 350 Klingon Bird of Prey, and the Adversary set as one set. So it's Romulan Bird of Prey, the Klingon Bird of Prey, and the Ferengi Marauder, and one new kit, the 1000 scale NX-01. That was 2005, and then all quiet. In 2008, Round 2 signed a licensing agreement to produce and market AMT, MPC, and Polar Lights kits, and this is when the revival really started to pick up. So 2008, it's all reissues though. But they did do the 650 TOS, the one that's been around since like 1967. Original box art and they did cardboard box, standard cardboard box, and a and a tin. Re-released the 1000 TOS, 1000 D7, 1000 NX-01. 2009, more reissues, the 1400 Enterprise E, Mr. Spock, the 67 TOS, we'll call it, 350 refit, and the one I kind of missed the most is the Vulcan Shuttle. 2010 was a good year. K7 reissue. Okay, this is when they did the Cadet series. TOS A and B as a kit, C, D, and E as their own, and then this is when the 1000 scale refit first appears. 2011, here we go. 350 Klingon Bird of Prey. Reissue of the original series, like this from the 670s, I think it was. The Romulan Bird of Prey into two packagings. 537 Reliant with new tooling. Enterprise B, which is what we're going to get into in a bit. New tooling reissue. Tholian Web edition of the Defiant, not the Enterprise. Klingon D7 from the 60s. Enterprise C. Yes, so there was a lot happening in 2011. And, for us modelers, the future was looking bright. Come along to 2012, Deep Space Nine reissued with the Defiant. Adversary set, kind of. They split it up to the Bird of Prey, and the Klingon Bird of Prey and Marauder are the same. A new set in 2500 series, Enterprise A, Reliant, and Katinga. Reissue of the 537 Katinga, 1000 Enterprise in a lunchbox. And then this was the big one for that year, the 350 Original Series Enterprise. And I was actually a member of the 1701 Club. So I have my t-shirt, my certificate of authenticity. So I'm going to post that stuff on Instagram. 2013, another new 2500 kit. Original Series, Enterprise, Bird of Prey, and D7. Mr. Spock and Lunchbox. The Bridge reissued with new panels and a few other accurate parts. Reissue of the 1400E. 1000 scale Romulan D7, which is basically a reissue of the Klingon D7. Reissue of the 1350 Enterprise NX-01. 1000 scale Enterprise TOS Enterprise, with the Botany Bay. 2014, the Exploration set, the 420 Defiant. This is the only time it was reissued because they broke the mold. If you see a 420 Defiant, you buy it. New 2500 set, Defiant Saratoga and Cardassian Galler class. Reissue of the NX-01 in 1000 scale with the Doug Drexler refit parts. Brand new 1000 scale Reliant. That's another one that people were very keen on. They did some Metal Earth stuff. 2015 Cutaway Enterprise reissue, build together. So the 67 TOS and the 1000 scale TOS. Some pre-painted kits. Brand new 1000 scale Romulan Bird of Prey. 2016 for the 50th anniversary, Excelsior is reissued. Once again, we're going to get into that later in the podcast. Another reissue of the 67 TOS in special packaging. 350 Klingon Bird of Prey. Finally, the clear Enterprise D 1400 scale. First reissue in some time. Reissue of the TOS in 350. 2017. This one's interesting. They must have the tooling for an F-104 Starfighter because they released it in Tomorrow's Yesterday. 7 Enterprise sets. So this is the 2500 series Enterprises, and they were released in a box together. If you've watched my Instagram, I'm actually working on that right now. And they made a little tiny 2500 series NX-01 to go with that. Reissue of the Vorcha and the Galler class, both with nuclear parts because those sprues or tools got lost. So new parts there. And the Galler class had Aztec decals. Same thing, I've done that one fairly recently. And those decals, man, what they do to that model kit, it's so good. Reissue of the 537 Reliant and a reissue of the 350 refit. 2018 537 refit, finally reissued after years of saying no, they weren't going to do it because it's not a great model kit, but there's so much nostalgia attached to that. New models, the 1350 Katinga and the 1000 scale Defiant. And the 2-pack, the Grissom and the Bird of Prey in 1000 scale. 2019, Runabout reissue, Romulan Warbird reissue, 2500 Series D reissue. Yeah, the NX-01 in 1000 scale reissue. 3 new kits, Discovery, Shenzhou, and Enterprise. 2020, brand new kit, the Discovery Enterprise in 1000 scale. Reissues of the 1000 scale Enterprise and Reliant, and there is a supplemental Aztec decal set with that, but it covers both kits. And another new kit, the 132 scale shuttle. 2021 reissue Deep Space Nine, still has the Defiant, but now a Keldon class. Reissue of the Excelsior, reissue of the Bridge, reissue of the 67 TOS, reissue of the 350 TOS, but with all the pilot parts, so it's like the Premier Edition that you got as part of the 1701 Club back in 2012. New kit, 1000 scale Voyager in gray and clear. 2022 Enterprise C reissue, 1000 scale Grissom and Bird of Prey reissue. Brand new kits, 350 Grissom, and a reissue of the shuttle, but with an interior this time. And I believe there was or is an interior kit for people who may not have built their first round shuttle. So you could do it either or. And 2023 so far, K7 reissue and 1350 Bird of Prey reissue. The Katinga, as Kronos 1 and 350, has been dropped already. It's already in the local hobby shop. And we'll see if anything else comes out for 2023. But that's a very, very quick rundown of the model kits. There's much more before that on this webpage, and there'll be a link in the description. So despite my concerns about choices in quality round 2 is made, I'm still glad they're there, and I'm still glad they're reissuing these kits because I miss them and I like having them. Let's now that I've kind of gone over a very brief history, like the last 20 years ish. Let's kind of talk about the Enterprise B. So when I was doing some research for the Excelsior Enterprise B, I came across Scalemates, and this is where the first thing that popped out at me is that Scalemates is good because it kind of shows you the issues when they were issued or reissued. So it shows the Excelsior in 94, which I remember, and then the Enterprise B in 95, 2011 for the Enterprise B, and then 2016, 2021 for the Excelsior, as we just talked about. And I'm like, so then I had to go start looking at the collector model blogs, because I remember reading them, and I'm like, well, how they had them both at the same time, because they didn't think they had the tools, or they think that they're permanently altered. So I started going through them. And same thing, there's going to be a link to each and every one of these collector model blogs in the show notes, so you can check it all out. The first mention of reissuing the Enterprise B or the Excelsior came in January 2010. It's a fairly lengthy blog post talking about that their plans for the Enterprise D had to get shelved, and they were looking at what to release. Is it the Excelsiors or the B? Because they're both very popular, but what exists and what doesn't exist. It ultimately ends up being post about, well, we're going to look into this. And as far as pictures go, there's a picture of the sprues from the Excelsior, a picture of the sprues from the Enterprise B. So you can kind of see them in comparison. And yeah, so they were kind of on the table about, or kind of on the fence about Excelsior Enterprise B, Excelsior Enterprise B. And in June of 2010, new blog post, kind of lengthy again, a couple supplemental updates added to it. And they were able to get the tools pulled from the factory and pictures taken. The belief at that time was that AMT had permanently altered the tooling for the Enterprise B, meaning that if they were ever to reissue an Excelsior, they'd have to create a bunch of new parts. And we're going to come back to that. And yeah, there was a note from, here it is. I finally got a hold of Bruce Byerly, who worked at AMT Ertl in the last few years they were around. He did a lot of design work there, including the Enterprise C and the Galor kits. Asked him about the Enterprise and Excelsior, and this is what he said. As far as the B, from what I can remember, we did make permanent changes to the mold. Might have been beryllium inserts, but I doubt it. They kind of decided the Excelsior had run its course. So yeah, as of that point, the belief was there was no Excelsior molds, but that doesn't track because as a builder, I know they were both available at the same time. So we're up to mid-August of 2010, And there's another update, and this is showing a bunch of CAD files and test shots of parts they've changed. So, improvements they made. They fixed the upper secondary hull so the strong back is correct. Put a curve in the back of the neck. Added the divots on either side of the deflector trench and made an entirely new lower saucer, because the one they made for the Enterprise B back in '95 was awful and not even close to right. And then we have October 2010. Not a post so much about the Enterprise B, but just in general, they went to iHobby and they had mock-ups of the Enterprise B and a couple pictures of the finished parts. Yeah, the saucer and the lower saucer and the upper secondary hull with the corrected pieces. And they're like, yep, okay, we've got it built up. It's going into production. It's going out 2011. They reissue it, which is great. You know, I assume it sold well. There's not many out there, but that was the last we saw of it. 2011, Enterprise B is made, fixed, it's put out the door, and so far never to be seen again, which is unfortunate, because I do think that it's ripe for reissuing. Like the Excelsior's done well. It's been reissued twice in 4 years. That's a pretty good turnaround for how Round 2 tends to reissue things. That's the kind of the quick story of the Enterprise B. And then all quiet until November 2015, when we start talking about the Excelsior. Now, I do believe Jamie Hood had mentioned looking at the Excelsior before, but I didn't read each post individually. I kind of looked for the broad strokes, because this here says, at long last, here's the promised sneak peek at the new parts for the upcoming Excelsior release. And it shows the Enterprise B tree, the Excelsior tree, and they've marked out these several pieces they've had to recreate. There's a note in the blog. There were supplemental molds to make the B the Excelsior again. That's how they were reissuing them both at the same time. But those are gone, which is lucky for us, because it led to these wonderful, wonderful changes. So, things had already been done. The strong back had been corrected, and the lower saucer had been corrected. These are the same from ship to ship. They end up making an entirely new lower secondary hull, and they use slide molding, which it sounds like they don't use much, because they want to make the secondary hull one piece with the deflector trench instead of having the deflector trench as a separate piece. So the secondary hull with new detail looks great. They made a completely new upper saucer, because the detail wasn't great on the other one. And while they did this, they did something really smart. They made it so you could change parts. They give you kit parts for both the NX and the NCC, because the bridge and impulse crystal and rear shuttle bay housing observation area are different between Star Trek 3, 4, 5, and 6. She got a bit of an upgrade for Star Trek 6. So early next gen and late movies all kind of have the same effect shot, with the big bridge, the big single impulse crystal, and the big observation area. So you can do either, which was a really, really nice touch. And they also improved the shuttle bay. It's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty good. So this post shows old parts and new parts, CAD files, and just how much work they put into this Excelsior. It's a lot of work, but lucky for us they did, because it ends up being a wonderful model. February 26, 2016. This is just really a show-off post. Test shots of the assembled model, showing different parts on it. Just a basic build-up, no paint, no decals, just like, hey, everything has come together, we're just about there. And then the last post about the Excelsior is July 2016. And once again, it's a show-off post, pictures of the finished model in both configurations, and then kind of references to changes, like a shot from Star Trek 3, shot from Star Trek 6, shot from TNG, shot of Greg Jean's model from flashbacks. Because, interestingly enough, when they needed the original Excelsior, they couldn't unrefit the Enterprise B. So it was literally cheaper to have Greg Jean build a new model. And this is where he lit the nacelle grills, which we hadn't seen before, but that kind of stayed after that. The CGI models tended to have that. So depending on how you go, engines lit or not lit, both are canon. Both have been seen on screen. It really comes down to personal choice. And yeah, so they go over the details, and there's a lot of good stuff here. The decal sheet and the supplemental Aztec set that comes in 2 colors. Slightly darker blues for the NX 2000, and the lighters for the NCC 2000. So either or. And having built this, they did get good decals. Cartograph, I believe, was the name of the company, an Italian company, and they were really, really good to work with. I still have a set. I still have I have a second Aztec set that I got way back when in 2016. So I can do an NCC version of the Excelsior. I've already got an NX version. But they were so good, and I hope that when they've reissued them, they've been just as good, because they are very forgiving, very tough. You can move them around a lot. The Excelsior reissue was a good seller for them, and I hope it continues to be. One of those ones that's in continuous release, like the 350 TOS and the 350 refit and the 67 TOS. As for building the models, so the Excelsior always went together very, very well. One of the challenges, though, was lighting the secondary hull, because the way it was made, some of the windows are in that big opening area. Now, it looks like the original studio model had an insert that kind of separated the shuttle bay assembly from the rest of the ship. So you would have had a little gap between the sides, so you can get lighting in there. Now, you can get aftermarket 3D printed parts or 3D files to do the same thing. But it does make it a bit of a challenge to light all the windows on the secondary hull as made. There's ways around that, but it's going to depend on your skill level as a modeler. But even if you don't have that skill level yet, try it. Just use some paper as a template and cut it out, shape it, put it in, see how it goes, transfer that to styrene, and just make a little insert. I'm going to leave links to my reference library where I've just collected photos of the models, so you can have access to those as well if you need some kind of... Certainly it's not comprehensive, but it's a lot of photos of the 2 models, so you can get in one place and just kind of go through them and find what works, because it can help you with your detailing of yours and give you some ideas. But yeah, so other than that, it goes together fairly well. I've never lit an Excelsior, so I don't know beyond the part I'm aware of, and that's just from me looking at it. I don't know how difficult it is. I will say this, because of the small scale, opening up the windows is difficult. The round ones, obviously not too difficult, because it's just a drill bit. But to get that oval good and straight is a challenge. Green Strawberry makes a photo etch set where they do the saucer edge, but not the secondary hull. If you mark it out, you might be able to take those guides and use it for a drilling guide. I'm going to end up trying it, so whenever I get to it, it'll be on the Jason's Model Shop Instagram or TikTok and YouTube and kind of all those places. The Enterprise B is a bit more of a challenge. Once again, I haven't lit it before, but the way the nacelles are made to light the Bussard collector, it's a big open area, so you have to find a way to physically isolate it from everything else. I haven't done enough research in other people's builds to know how they've tackled that, but it may be just as simple as, maybe not tinfoil, because you don't want to short out your lighting, but something like that. It's a bit more permanent, but you could use tulip or even liquid electrical tape to just coat the whole back of it. Like, put the lights in, coat the whole back of it, isolate it from everything else. Getting flashes up there, you're probably looking at fiber optics because the area is so small, but I don't know. And the other challenges are the same as the Excelsior. Drilling windows that aren't all wonky. So these are things I'm going to tackle because I'm curious about how to do them and kind of get that information out for people to use. But other than that, the small scale is a challenge, but it's also good because it doesn't destroy your shelf space, because it's a long model. Now, the 1000 scale is nice because, Round 2 has put so much effort into that, so you can have a nice little fleet that's kind of similar. And the C, D, and E are all 1400 scale, so they're not exact, but they're pretty close. So you can make a nice little collection of shelf models. But other than that, challenges for building, keep an eye on Jason's Model Shop, and I'll be putting that stuff up as I go. and just kind of like, hey, this is the challenge I've run into, here's the solutions, here's how I did it, here's how other people, I know how other people have done it, I'll also share that information as well. But all that to say, the Excelsior has had quite a journey as a model kit, from its humble beginnings of really getting quickly put out there with, cause look, is it an okay representation? Absolutely. From 94. Is it great? No. Tons of inaccuracies. So they kind of got out there. And I remember it was exciting as a kid to finally see more starships. Then the Enterprise B came along. And yes, they took one, they altered it, made inserts so they could produce both at the same time. They produced a lot of them, as I said. Well, a lot more Excelsiors than Bs. Or the Bs were just more popular. And then, to kind of come around, a decade later, and be like, hey, we're gonna tune up a bunch of stuff and re-release this, which will then lead to redoing the Excelsior and making it pretty accurate. And it's just an interesting journey, and I'm hoping to do more of this. But I think it's about time to wrap it up. I've been rambling on for some time. As I said, everything I mentioned will be in the show notes with links to all the collector model blogs, Memory Alpha, but I will post my reference library I've got a Google photo library, the Excelsior and the Enterprise B. Other than that, I want to thank everyone for listening to the show and supporting me through Jason's Model Shop on the other platforms. Hope you're all getting good info there that you can use for your own builds. I do have a Patreon for the show. If you like what you hear and you want to support it so I can keep making these, check that out. I've got 3 tiers, and they've all got, I think, decent rewards isn't the right word. Because it's not a reward for like, hey, thanks for giving me money, here's your reward. It's more like, what can I give that gives additional value to people who support me? So, I don't know the right word for it, but yeah. Patreon for the show, check it out. Hope you join us. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoy all the Jason's Model Shop posts on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. I hope you join me for the next one. And remember to keep on building and to have fun. You're going to need it.